All right, good morning, everyone. I'm sorry for all the delays. For those watching on YouTube, you obviously don't recognize any delays, but I'm talking to the live listeners. My camera stand was messing up and I had to fix it, so the show is starting a little late today. But to all of you, welcome and thank you for coming to episode, I believe this is 18 now. So we've been going strong. This is the Duron Morning Show to anyone that is new watching, with your host himself, the Duron, which is obviously me. You can follow me on any social media platform that you're on that's out there. I'm probably out there too, at the Duron, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook. All of them are at the Duron. So since I already wasted enough time, let's just dive right in today. Happy Black History Month to everyone. I tried to type that into the title, but nothing that I was using was allowing me the character limit to do so. So happy Black History Month to everyone out there. And I wanted to make this, and not only this episode, but I wanted to make this episode a Black History Month edition episode. So, I always like to tell the backstory of how I come up with the ideas that I end up talking about. So normally what I do is I look for things that are trending or things that have been on my mind, and things that obviously need to be talked about or topics of discussion. So I was on Twitter and there was a huge debate about reverse racism in the black to white community, and the topic of reparations came up. So, for those of you that don't know, so that we can even start from the beginning, first of all, the definition of reparations is paying for something, paying or giving accommodations when something has been done wrong to you. So on a simple scale, reparations are when you go to the restaurant and you get cold food, or you get food that you didn't want or it tastes bad or whatever. A simple reparation could be if they give you the food for free, or if they bring you a new, or even better, if they bring you a new meal and both things are now free. You know what I mean? Like, that's a simple reparation, just so that we're on the same page. But in the black community, there have been talks forever about there being some form of reparations for the 400 years of slavery, and on top of that, another 150 years of segregation and laws that were implemented, such as the Jim Crow laws that were implemented to hold black people down. So if you do the simple math, we got here on like slave ships in like 1619, and we weren't able to vote I always use the number of when Dr. King died, because a lot of things obviously changed before him, but in my head, that is primarily when in my head anyway, when things started to get a little better for us. Obviously, after his walk on Washington, and then unfortunately after his death. So the number I always use is he died in 68 or 69. I think it was 1 year before the moon landing. The moon landing was in 69. He died in 68. So just to make the numbers easier, we can say 69. So from 1619 to 1969, from 1619 to 1969, there were, and I believe it was even before that, because of other numbers, whatever, we won't go there, because Columbus had slaves and he got here in 1492. But regardless, where I'm getting at is there were years and years and years and years of brutality, of enslavement, and quite literally, without having to frame it in all these different ways, holding black people down in the United States. So even before it was the United States in 1776. So because of that, we've had a delayed start in our monetary come up, in our rights, in home ownership, in education. Anything that we've achieved now has really been done over like the last 100 years, because I don't want to take anything away from like Madam C.J. Walker and George Washington Carver. Like, the inventions and the things that they were able to do were in the early 1900s. So I'm not taking anything away from them. So I want to add the last 100 years. However, realistically, and those are, as we talked about the other day, those people, those heroes were anomalies. In reality, the big percentages of people, they didn't really get rights, or they weren't able to do as much until after 68. And yes, in the North, there were states that were more progressive, that allowed people to have home ownership and education. But the reality is, and I just saw this today, the reality is Ruby Bridges, who was the I don't really know 100% of her story, because I always confuse it with Brown versus Board of Education, to be honest. But I know Ruby Bridges was one of if not the first black little girl to go to an all-white segregated school. And I don't know, I think it was in Kansas, I'm pretty sure. But she just turned 66. My grandma's older than her. So we act like these things have happened hundreds and hundreds of years ago. There are people still alive today that are walking amongst us that had to live this. And and I hate bringing in celebrities, but look at your favorite celebrities or your favorite people, right? Morgan Freeman. Morgan Freeman's 80 plus, and we look at him running around doing movies and doing all these things. He's 80 plus. He was alive. Ruby Bridges is younger than him. I know all the things that my grandma is able to do, and she is one of a kind by herself, but she's able to still exercise and go on all these vacations and do these things. She's 70, I believe, too, 73. She's 7 years older than Ruby Bridges. So where I'm getting at, to get to the point, is we have faced a lot, and it hasn't happened that long ago. So because of that, people amongst like high-ranking officials and black advocates in the NAACP and all around us, they have been advocating there needs to be some form of reparations so that the black community can get some form of a boost, because we've been fighting for ourselves and by ourselves forever. And there are definitely some allies. I don't want to take anything away from them either, but primarily we have been fighting for ourselves, by ourselves, without any help. So, and we definitely have some anomalies, and people try to use those anomalies as I don't want to use this word. They try to use them as like the framework, or see if they were able to achieve it, so can you. There are, and I believe this is the world, not just America. Yeah, in America, I think there's 6 or maybe 5 black billionaires in the entire world, and I might be wrong about this. In the whole world, I believe there's 13. Let me do it. I don't normally Google during the show, but I gotta Google that, because I've seen this number before. Are there in the world, not just the U.S.? Okay, so I wanted to say black. How many black billionaires? So in the world, just to give you guys the perspective for what I'm about to tell you, in the world in 2019, there were 2,825 billionaires. 2,825 billionaires. So black billionaires in the world. The U.S. has 80. The U.S. has 80 billionaires. There's only 5 in the United States. So the United States has 800 billionaires. There are only 5 in the United States, and you probably know them off the top of your head. So when we talk about reparations, that is what we're talking about. everyone looks at them and says, oh, like there's obviously, you guys can obviously do it. Like, come on. There's 5 people that have become billionaires. And I don't know the number for millionaires. It's obviously going to be a lot bigger. But, I mean, you know who they are. They're Oprah Winfrey, Michael Jordan, Kanye West, Jay-Z. And I think, who would be number 5? I don't know who number 5 would be. But that's regardless of the point. They were the anomalies that people now try to frame black people after and say, look, they were able to do it. Why can't you? But like I said, the reality is on a big scale, we're fighting from behind. We are truly fighting from behind. So because of that, there have been talks for years and years and years, but they've come up a lot recently on what can we do about this. There needs to be some form of reparations given to the black community. And this isn't something like that's new. So a lot of people compare the horrific things or the restrictions. There's a word that a lot of people use, but I can't think of it right now. But a lot of people like to compare what black people have gone through to what the Jewish community went through during the genocide. And the genocide was 4 years, and 6 million people lost their lives. If you compare slavery and the Jim Crow law era and stuff, they say, I've seen numbers where it says it's about 20 million people, but they don't know. They don't know a real number of how many people could have lost their lives. So with the genocide, after the genocide was over, then Germany gave reparations to all of the Jewish families that were affected, and they also put huge banning laws over the Nazi Party, over the use of swastikas, over, like, that is not tolerated or played around with in Germany. Honestly, the entire world, except for, I guess, America, because they bring swastikas here and nothing is done. But with Germany gave reparations to the Jewish community, and now if you look around, or if you look at what people say, people are always saying, oh, Jewish people are so stingy with their money, they're the richest people, or they have control of the world, and they say things like that. Well, we have to take into consideration they had a huge boost after what was done to them in the genocide. And that's just the reality of the situation. I'm not coming for them or anything like that. And to get to what I was talking about earlier, what made me even want to have this conversation is I saw a little Twitter argument about the intentional post, or the first post, was someone saying that it should be, basically it's okay to hate our oppressors. We've been oppressed by white people forever, and basically, like, this is where our hate stems from, and they've never done anything to right their wrongs. So someone said to that, a black man said to that, like, the people in 2021 have nothing to do with that. We're wrong for hating on the people in 2021 when their ancestors were the ones that did that. And a woman responded to that saying, like, no, we are basically right in our hatred towards them, because reparations were never paid and nothing is ever done. And the guy's response was, that would be like the people in Germany hating on that would be like the Jewish community hating Germans in 2021 because of what was done back in the 1940s. And the woman said, like, whoa, no. It is not even close to comparable, because the Germans did their best to right their wrongs. And they paid reparations, and they still to this day pay reparations to the Jewish community. It's been 70, 80 years. They to this day pay reparations for what the atrocities that happened. And the guy said, what do you mean? You can never, quote unquote, right the wrong. Paying them money won't bring the lives back. And the woman said what I said and what I'm going to continue to say. She said, yeah, it doesn't bring them their lives back, but it helps them fix their community. After 6 million people in one community die, that is, without some assistance, without help, you can't fix that. And like I said, now the Jewish community is looked at as very powerful, is looked at as the richest. And if you say anything about the Jewish community, they hit you quick. They get you quick. And I don't know if it's because it's early or what. I keep losing all my words. What is the term that they use? It's not racist when it comes to them. It's it'll come to me later. But they hit you quick with that. You're acting racist towards Jews. So I say all that to say I am on the side with the woman, and I also have an additional argument to add to that. But to speak on the side with the woman is, they say, or she was saying that, she was basically saying that things aren't being done, right? Or nothing has been done. And my argument to that, or my additional argument is, just because they didn't do anything to us now, the 2021 whites of America, it's their ancestors, that, to me, that's also the problem. Yes, they haven't done anything to us now. They're not, they don't have whips and they're beating us, but because they're not doing something, we still have to try to fend for ourselves, and we still have to combat the things that were done, not only in the 60s, but in the early 1900s, in the 1800s, 1700s. We have to combat all that still to this day, because they're not doing anything to help us. And there are easily things that can be done. Easily. We're giving out, and I don't want to compare what's happening with the pandemic to the entire country that's happening to our community, but I mean, it's damn near close. But they're giving out $2 trillion stimulus packages to the entire country for, here's $1,400 if you make under $100,000, $75,000. Black people in America make up 13% of our population. Giving them, here's, I don't have the number. There's some people that have come up with like crazy numbers, like give them $200,000 each. I don't know if that's possible, but if it was, that would be beautiful. But I do think if you gave everyone like yearly things for a 10, 15, 20-year thing, I don't think it needs to be done all at once. That's my opinion. I don't think it needs to be, give them $200,000 so they can shut up. I think if they said, here's $30,000 and we're going to do that for 10 years, 15 years or something like that. Like that's paying, that in itself is paying for college for someone. That in itself is a down payment on a house for someone. You know what I mean? Like that stimulates our economy, the black economy. And we already have tons of wealth in our community that we spend on nonsense, but that in itself is its own problem. But there are tons of people who don't have any wealth, and like I live in a very progressive state, New Jersey. I can't even imagine what it's like in, I don't know, Mississippi or something, or like in Kansas or Oklahoma or somewhere where racism in the 60s and before was very, very, very prevalent. And like I say this to people a lot. I've dealt with some very, very minimal racist things happening in my life, but I live in a very progressive state, and I also, not only is my state progressive, I was dominantly in my whole life surrounded by blacks. I had, in my whole life growing up, I could name on my hand the white friends that I had. Like, it would take two hands. It would take two hands, but I was surrounded. I can't name all my black friends. They're everywhere. They're all my friends. You know what I mean? So I didn't have to deal with a lot of racist things. However, I can only imagine if someone in Kansas or Alabama, Oklahoma, in the southern states where where racism was very prevalent and still remains to be prevalent, what it's like to live there. And not only that, how many things that they had to fight for, like simple things like home ownership or even the right to vote. Even though the right to vote for blacks and women was passed way before the 60s, people still were having a hard time to vote in the 60s because of voter suppression. They would give them tests and say, you got 2 minutes to solve this 20-minute thing that was impossible. And if you want to try that for yourself, you can look it up online. They have examples of those. And I tried to solve it in 2021 today. I couldn't do it. I wouldn't have been able to vote. And I tried to go as fast as possible and focus. I failed. I couldn't do it. They give you like 2 to 5 minutes to do this long 20-minute test to see if you're eligible to vote. So if you take all those things into consideration, it's very, and this is maybe this is me being biased as a black man, but it's very easy to see why reparations in this country for blacks are needed. And not only us, and when I don't like, and I hate when people try to compare traumas or compare, like, they think black people, that's the biggest trope about everything that's going on right now is black people are try to make everything about them. And that's not true. But we would just like things to be acknowledged that, hey, we are hurting too. As soon as we say there should be reparations for blacks, everyone comes to the forefront and say, well, what about us too? I'm not saying that you guys should be ignored. You guys should have yours too. Native Americans, there was Latin people that were slaves. There were Latin people that were slaves as well. Like, you guys should have yours as well. But right now I'm fighting for mine. It's the same thing as all lives matter. Yeah, all lives do matter. But y'all not acting like my black life matters. So I'm trying to remind y'all. I don't have to remind you guys that white lives matter. I don't have to remind you guys that Jewish lives matter. I'm just trying to wave my hand and say, hey, you know I'm still sitting right here too, right? I'm not ignoring you guys. I'm saying that I'm being ignored. So with the reparations, that's exactly how it is. I'm not saying you guys don't deserve y'all's too. I'm just waving my hand and saying, hey, I need a piece of the pie. There are, like, and I was looking at this yesterday. There are tons of companies that are still alive today that had slaves back then. Like, if you go look at Levi's, the Levi Strauss & Company, go look at their original logo. It's going to be two horses strapped to some jeans running in the other direction, and it looks like it's stretching the jeans. They used to, and trigger warning for anyone out there, they used to do that to blacks. They used to strap one of their legs to one horse and then the other leg to one horse, and then would beat the two horses in different directions until the person got ripped apart. And they would grab the strongest person they could and do that to, and they would make the children, the women, and the other black men watch to psychologically beat them down. And the motto was to keep the body, take the mind. That was the motto for slavery. So we all talk about today how black people's psychology is so messed up. They're so aggressive. They're so this. They're so that. We have been, and unbeknownst to us, there have been atrocities and terrors passed down to us from hundreds of years ago. And it's not even like a religious thing or anything like that. It's genetic. It's science that people's traumas from their past lives get passed down through their children. Like, that's a real scientific fact. And it's a stereotype. Everyone looks at us and says, "Oh my God, black people are so athletic. How come they're the most athletic?" Do you guys know what we were doing in them fields? Like, we was putting in work. So for us to have worked every day, all day, 16 hours a day, and then have children and it gets passed down to us, yes, we have more athletic bones, we have more athletic features, and we're prone to be more athletic because our ancestors had to be athletic to survive. And the ones that escaped ran from state to state. We don't like to walk to the corner store. They were running for months. To be 1000% honest with you, I can't remember the last time, unless it was in a mall, I can't remember the last time I walked a mile. They ran for hundreds, if not thousands of miles. Happy Black History Month to everybody out there listening. Oh, man. If you listen to any, like, it sounds like I'm becoming passionate about this because I am, but if you listen to any black person out there that's knowledgeable on the subject, we become so passionate and enticed with what's going on or what has happened because, like I said, there's nothing being done about it. And all of these things are facts. It's not embellishment. It's not things that are made up. All of these things are fact, and the sad fact about it is the things that we do know are probably, and I hope that this is very incorrect, but the things that we do know are probably on the lighter end or on the softer scale of the things that did actually happen. We find out different things every year, and that just make you just go like, or these people that did this were clearly not even civilized. I just found out when I was buying my home, I had to go to a furniture store, and this person, this worker, was just giving me history on different furniture, and it blew my mind. But what they used to do for furniture to make it soft or to do repairs on it is sometimes they would take black slaves' hair and put it inside the cushions and use that as like a replacement to cotton, because the black people's hair was so soft and it was this and that. Like they looked at us as tools, as a simple use to fix a chair. And like I've talked about in other episodes when it came to colorism, we look at today's society and we get so angry, and justifiably, we get so angry that people fight over light skin versus dark skin, or they say, oh, your dark skin is so ugly, ha ha ha. That is something that has been instilled in us, into our bodies and our minds for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. Oh, you're dark skinned and ugly, you got to go work outside. Oh, you're light skinned and pretty, you're gonna the master's gonna end up raping you, and you have the light skinned babies. Like, this is something that we had no control over, and we fight with each other today, and we go, oh my gosh, how do we solve these issues, and what do we do? It takes a deep dive into the psychology of what has happened to us. There are so many issues that need to be fixed, and one of them, and this is, to me, the way that they are printing money right now, this isn't even the biggest issue. The one of them is reparations to the community. And like I said, it's just because of the laws that were passed. This could be its own talk by itself, but I have a huge problem when people say just obey the law, or just, you know what I mean? There have been tons and tons. Laws are a man-made thing, something that we made up, and I understand completely why a society must have rules and laws. I completely understand it. Or if there were none, people would do whatever they want. They'd rob stores, they'd get away with it. I completely understand. However, what also needs to be understood is there have been laws that have been in place and technically are still in place that have held communities, not only the black community, but held communities down. Whereas, like everyone knows that I'm a licensed realtor in the state of New Jersey, it's mandatory that we learn about redlining, which, if you don't know, redlining was a process used Oh my gosh, forever. But honestly, mostly in the Jim Crow era, after laws were passed that black people were allowed to be people, or one whole person and not 3/5 of a person, and people tried to buy homes. They tried to own real estate. What people would do is they would they call it redlining because that's actually what it is. They would grab communities, mayors, governors, the local authorities. They would grab maps and they would make red lines on these maps, and they'd say this is where black people mostly live. Don't and sometimes they did it in reverse as well. Like, this is where the white people live. Make sure we keep the black people out of this area. But it was mostly the opposite. They would say this is where the black people live. Do not put like white people in these communities. Don't even like let them do things here. And if we're going to sell homes here, the rates need to be crazy. The down payment needs to be high as hell, and you need to be basically like the perfect gentleman black boy if in black family, if we're going to sell homes here to these people. So what that did as well is, if homes were even sold, they were tinier. They, like I said, the rates were higher, so it means the payments were more. The down payments were more, so black people couldn't even afford the homes. And what I just learned recently is they to make the place less appealing as well, as they actually tore down tons and tons of trees in these redlined areas. So a byproduct or an effect of this, which I had no idea, like I said, we find out things every day. I just found this out like 2 weeks ago. A byproduct of this is because there were no trees, there was no shade. Because there was no shade, these redlined areas over the years became 3, 4 to 5 to 6 degrees hotter in these areas, and that the byproduct of that is things that we can't even think of. One could be something as little as, oh, there needs to be more air conditioning in these areas, which makes the electric bill higher, which makes the black community pay more. The black community pays more money to the electric companies opposed to the white companies. What does that mean? That means black people are spending more money than white people. That means we're not able to save as much money, and multiply that over tens of years, tens of 20s, 30s of years. That adds up because of just because of a quote unquote simple law like redlining. And everyone says, well, make sure you're following the law. There were laws that legally said you could like beat up and murder black people if they went into the white only restaurants or the white only water fountain. These were legal. This was the law in the South. So it's always been a slippery slope for me, and always been a topic of conversation when people say, oh, come on, that's the law. You got to follow the law. There have been crazy laws implemented that people were just following that ended up murdering my people. You can understand why I don't like the laws. So, all in all, I know I've went on tons of tangents that were obviously relevant, but tangents nonetheless. I don't think it's fair, to kind of wrap it up, I don't think it's fair to compare what has been done in what was done in the Jewish community to what was done is being done in the black community, because no reparations and no, all we've gotten is, what I'm trying to say is, all we've gotten is apologies. We've gotten words. We've gotten no actions. Nothing has been done. Like I said, I don't even like doing much Googling during the show, but I have to Google one other thing. How much money has Germany paid Israel for the Holocaust? That came right up. So as soon as the Holocaust ended, Germany started paying Jewish people $3,000 per person back then in the 40s. That is equivalent to $29,550 to today. And they've been doing that since then. And this just came up. Germany is still paying reparations today to Israel. Today. And I want to find a number because I want to get this number on the show if I can. So I'm just going to read this quick little excerpt. I've never read this before. I don't even know if it's accurate. It says, in 1951, Israeli authorities made a claim to the four powers occupying post-war Germany regarding compensation and reimbursement. So, first and foremost, we don't even have a nation to do this for us. Did you actually understand that first sentence I just said? In 1951, Israel, the country, stuck up for the Jewish community and said, yo, you got to do something about this because you have broken us. An entire country got behind them and said, yo, Germany, you got, like, what are we going to do about this? Who stands up for us? Where do we come from? If you're a black person out there listening right now, where do your ancestors come from? I know my grandma used to live in Ohio. I can't say that she's from, or our people came from Ethiopia or Egypt or Nigeria. I don't know. I have no idea. What country sticks up for all of the 14% of the population of America? What country comes forward and says, yo, you broke us. We need reparations. We don't have that. We don't have someone behind us. We don't know where we're from. We don't know where to go. They all say, go back to where you came from. Where is that? You tell me and I will go back there. In 1951, Israeli authorities made a claim to the four powers occupying post-war Germany. If you don't know, because Germany, after America and the rest of the countries, Italy and France and all the rest of the countries, Great Britain, after they won the German war, the World War II, they occupied Germany and said, we got to fix this because the reason Hitler came into power is because this whole system is broken. So they occupied it and kind of taught Germany how to run themselves for a couple of years, and then they left. So when it says the four powers occupying post-war Germany, Israel went and talked to them and said, yo, since you guys are running the show here, what are we going to do about this? So I'm going to read it one more time, and then I'm not going to stop. I'm just going to keep going. In 1951, Israeli authorities made a claim to the four powers occupying post-war Germany regarding compensation and reimbursement based on the fact that Israel had absorbed and resettled 500,000 Holocaust survivors. They calculated that since absorption had cost $3,000 per person, they were owed $1.5 billion by Germany. So it says the $3,000 per person was $30,000 in today's dollars. They were owed $1.5 billion in that time, which is about $15 billion in today's money. They calculated that since absorption had cost about $30,000 per person, they were owed $15 billion by Germany. They also figured that $6 billion worth of Jewish property had been pillaged by the Nazis, but stressed that the Germans could never make up what they did with any type of material recompensation. Negotiations leading to the reparations agreement between Israel and West Germany began in 1952 and were conducted between representatives of the government. Blah, 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 blah. They talked about it. Where's the number? The agreement was signed by these people in Luxembourg. Large majority, yada, yada. What do they get? The Arab League, blah, blah, blah. So implementation. Despite the protest, the agreement was signed in September 1952. West Germany paid Israel a sum of 3 billion marks. Don't know what a mark is. A mark is the German, like, dollar. Despite the protest, the agreement was signed in September 1952, and West Germany paid Israel a sum of 3 billion marks over the next 14 years. 450 million marks were paid to the World Jewish Congress. The payments were made to the state of Israel as the heir to those victims who had no surviving family. The money was invested in the country's infrastructure and played an important role in establishing the economy of the new state. So it goes to everything that I just said. We don't have that. They established their own new economy. They got their own country, and they said, yo, look, because this happened to us, we're going to try to become a world power. We're stuck here. They put us in slavery. They said, yo, you're free to go. And then quote unquote released us and said, "Go ahead, like go figure it out. You guys are smart. You guys we've never taught you anything. We used to kill you if we found out you were reading books. But I mean, you guys are smart. You'll figure it out. I don't understand what the problem is." The reparations were paid directly to the headquarters, yada yada. I see numbers down there, but I'm trying to see if there's anything else. A great part of the reparations money went into purchasing equipment and raw materials for companies that were owned by the government, the Jewish Agency, and the labor union. Notably, much of that money went to purchasing equipment for about 1,300 industrial plants. 2/3 of this money was given to 36 factories. So they were able to build infrastructure. They were able to then fend for themselves. They didn't have to go back to Germany and say, "Hey, could you give us more money?" And they bought them infrastructure so that they could make items and sell them and make their own money. Blah blah blah. I'm gonna go down here to these numbers and see if this is anything. It says the Berlin court admitted that the property law was there was some property law, yada yada. For the sisters in question. Oh, I think this is something else, but $44,000. In 2009, Israeli finance minister announced that he will demand a further $450 million to $1 billion in reparations from Germany on behalf of some 30,000 survivors. In 2010, according to the German finance ministry, Nazi Germany robbed $120 billion to 120 billion Reichsmarks to Jews, which is approximately 20 billion US dollars. So that's what they're claiming, like they were robbed of during that time. So they feels that they probably still haven't even been given their due. And I thought that was important to read, and I wanted to read that because we see what can be done. And that was in the 50s. That was 60, 70 years ago. And we say, yo, it's just impossible to pay reparations today. I mean, like how would we even go about it? How would we do it? You would go and get the money and give it to us. Good. There's I don't know if you guys know of this guy. His name is Grandmaster Jay. He was the head of the NFAC, which was protecting Breonna Taylor's family after her murder for a little while, and they also went and marched on Kentucky and made the mayor or the governor say they made him reopen the case. So he's their leader. His name is Grandmaster Jay. He said, just give us Texas and leave us alone. He said all the 14% of black people should be able to fit in Texas, give that to us as our own country, and leave us alone. I don't know if we would all fit in Texas, but I'm here for it. If I feel like something like this is able to be implemented, we have 50 states. Give us California, Texas, or New York, one of the largest, and pay for our infrastructure. You don't need, if you don't want to give us $30,000 per person, fine. Give us the means to have our own businesses, have our own infrastructure, have our own industries where we don't need you and you can leave us alone. Let us start. For people that don't know, and I know that to pay us all and to do this would take trillions of dollars, and I get that, but for people that don't know, and I don't think that this is common knowledge as much as it needs to be, the United States defense budget, the military budget, each year, not just this isn't just something that happens over a 10-year period. This is every single year. Their defense/military budget every year is $700 billion with a B. It's been like that since 2001, since 9/11. That's been 20 years now, right? Do 20 years times $700 billion. I'm not doing the math. You do it. And you tell me that they couldn't pay us reparations each year the same way that they said, oh, we got attacked. We need to protect ourselves. And for those, I guess for context, for those of you that also don't know, that is more than number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way up to 13 combined of the world. China has a $200 billion budget, which is still absurd. But then if you take number 2, who is China, all the way up to 13, If you add them all together, our defense budget in the United States is more than all of them added together. And then we still have $100 billion more dollars than that. I'm ending the show there. What questions we got? If there are no questions, look into how you can, and I'll do the same. I'm not just going to be a hypocrite. Look into how you can get your local authorities, your governor, your senator, to pitch reparations. Also, how I do want to end the show, just so that we know that even though this isn't really monetarily related, things like this can be done. The Latin community right now, during this next push for a third stimulus check, the way that the Democrats are going about it, they're not doing something that they call bipartisan. Partisan is when only one party agrees to it. So we're about to pass a partisan stimulus check, which only the Democrats agree with. Not one Republican agrees with this next stimulus check or the stimulus bill. So because of that, there is I don't remember the name of it 100%, but I've been doing like my research about it. Basically, there's a way that the Democrats are going to pass this bill, and it's legal, and it's only through their power, only through their volition. Because of that, the Latin community, because they were a huge part in getting Joe Biden elected, and that's a fact, they are saying that this is probably the only time or the only chance that they'll get for them to pass some form of bill for immigration, or for they call it like something about dreamers. When you come to this country and you can get like rights or laws. That part I am ignorant on. However, what I do know is they're trying to get some form of bill passed, because they claim and they know it'll never get passed if the Republicans have something to do with it. So they want it to be part of the next stimulus bill. They want it to be added to their, like, oh, also on top of the stimulus checks and the money going towards businesses and stuff, Latin people have, or immigrants have these rights, these things. I don't know exactly what they're asking for, but what I'm getting at is if you apply pressure, things like this can be done. They're claiming like, yo, we got you into the office. This was one thing that we were told could happen and would happen. We're applying pressure and we want it to happen now. And we know that since really only the Democrats want this to happen, not only is this going to be our only chance, this should be when it's implemented. That's their argument. So we'll see what happens with that. And I think that's closely related to what's happening right now with these reparations, because even though, like I said, that's not monetarily related, they're applying pressure and say, we helped you get into this office. We need this to be done. If you go look at the stats, and like I said, I'm a big stat person. I only speak facts. I don't really like to use embellishment or opinions. If you look at the facts, black women and black people in general were a huge factor in getting Joe Biden elected. Latins as well, like a huge factor. So if the things that we were told or can be done aren't done, we have the power to make sure he doesn't get in there again. So we need to hold our representatives accountable, and I think that we should and we can. On that note, I think today was a beautiful episode. Like I said, happy Black History Month to everyone out there. This was episode 18, speaking on reparations and the things that have been, the atrocities and the harm that has been done to the black community, that if you don't know what I look like, I'm obviously a part of. So on that note, I hope you guys have a beautiful Thursday. Today is Friday Eve. I'll probably do like a lighthearted, fun episode tomorrow. I don't know what I'll talk about. I never know for the next day. This is your host, the Duron Coles. Well, like I say in the beginning and at the end, you can follow me on all social media platforms at the Duron Coles. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, anything that you got. I probably got too. I don't got TikTok. I don't really care for that. I'm out of here. See ya.